wants community, but it turns out community is very hard.
The most challenging thing about being in community is also the most beautiful thing about being in community, which is being constantly humbled.
Living in community, you're forced to face all the different ways to be human, and in the ways that it's triggering, in the ways that you're not getting what you want, in the ways that you have to make compromises, in the ways that your most deeply held beliefs are challenged, the way that your ways of doing things are constantly rubbed up against.
You can talk about wisdom and compassion in some chai shop in India or a 10-day retreat and go off and do your own thing. But when you live with 30 other spiritual friends, that tests whether you can truly embody wisdom, embody compassion. And that has been both beautiful and challenging and has fueled so much of my personal growth.
The hardest part about being in community is you have to face people that you have issues with or that you have beef with, and you can't avoid that.
The most challenging part, but also the most rewarding part, is like running up against people who don't like match your preferences around the kinds of people you want to be around.
I'm a super judgmental person. That's my main neuroses, is being a judgmental person. Some people shame themselves. I judge the world.
Just when you think you've got this thing figured out, somebody pisses you off in the kitchen and you are acting not at all from your best self. So you're constantly brought back to the need to be humble and stay grounded in your practice.
It is super challenging to live with 30 people. Why do you have to yell while you do this? Why do you walk so loud and slam the door? All these little things. Is it really them? Or is this my mind judging?
You have to really look at what's happening in your own mind and what your own patterns are.
Being in community forces you to develop patience and forces you to stare squarely at the ways in which you are still impatient and ways in which you still might want other people to be different than they are. It's just a subtle form of hatred, really.
Community only works if everyone is committed to something bigger than themselves.
One of the biggest shifts that I've realized is moving from this perspective of acquisition, of getting something, to relinquishment, to letting go. And seeing the latter initially as the sense of sacrifice for the greater good, but actually it might be not in my best interests. And now realizing that letting go of relinquishment for the greater good of this community is true joy.
By living in community, we're learning both to collaborate and to decenter ourselves, right? To put others' needs before ourselves, be able to find solutions that are good for everyone. And that takes practice. It takes a lot of practice to figure out how do we solve this problem in a way that causes the least amount of harm or takes into account as many perspectives as possible.
Being in community, there's definitely this butting of heads. This classic metaphor in Zen is the best way to wash chopsticks is by rubbing them up against each other, and that friction cleans us off. And so living in community here, a lot of our delusions and ignorance and selfish habits rub up against each other, and in that way we get to purify and let go of those fixed ways that are actually not helping us.
The hardest part about being in community is having to be around people when you're falling apart. The best part about being in community is to have people there for you when you're falling apart.
Community and friendship here is definitely the biggest teacher and one of the most important and nourishing aspects of this place.
It's not just that you run from these painful spaces inside of yourself, but you also hide them from others. And so when they start coming to the surface and dominating you, and you can't help but reveal that to everybody else, it's terrifying.
Everyone has a huge amount of benefit just living in an honest community that is dedicated to the harmony and the cultivation of everyone inside and the community itself. It's
extremely challenging, but it's a worthwhile challenge to try to face.
Be held in love when that's happening is, I get goosebumps just talking about it. It's the most profound gift I've ever received.